They called me sweetheart. Not in private, not kindly. It was Colonel Benjamin Carter, standing at the head of the room, surrounded by 32 officers, all in uniform, all watching me. "Let's hear from our sweetheart over here," he said, smiling like he hadn't just slapped me across the face with those words. The room cracked open with laughter, loud and easy. The kind of laughter that tells you exactly where you stand. I didn't laugh. I didn't flinch. I nodded once, calm as ice, and opened my folder. "My name is Joanne Reese, former medevac pilot, Army Air Corps, 12 years active, 1 Distinguished Flying Cross, 2 service medals, and more emergency evac missions than I care to count. But none of that mattered in that room. Not today. Today, I was the woman in the corner with a pretty face and a quiet mouth. You'd think the uniform would protect you. Those medals mean something outside of a battlefield. But in rooms like that, silence still weighs more than service. And the men who never flew into a firestorm feel entitled to mock the ones who did. I was used to it. Sure. Doesn't mean it stopped stinging. Doesn't mean I forgot how to keep my face unreadable while every muscle inside me burned. When Carter turned back to the projector, still smirking, I caught the look from a younger lieutenant across the table. She looked down fast, ashamed. I remembered that look. I used to wear it before I earned the right to walk through fire. But in that moment, I wasn't thinking about her. I was thinking about how long I'd waited for this moment. How long had I waited for him to ask who I really was? And what would happen when I answered? 5 years ago, Syria was on fire. Not metaphorically. I mean real flames, licking through black smoke. The kind that stains your lungs and never quite washes off. That night, I was stationed at Al-Tanf Base when the emergency alert came through. Unit Charlie, deep behind enemy lines, pinned, injured, requesting extraction. Command hesitated. Intel said the airspace was red, hot with anti-air fire and sandstorm-level winds. Orders were simple. Do not attempt a rescue. Not worth the risk. But I knew their window was closing. If we waited, we'd be recovering bodies, not soldiers. I strapped in before the final abort order even came. My co-pilot, Alex Carter, glanced at me like I'd lost my mind. "You sure about this?" he asked. "Not even a little," I said, but I throttled up anyway. The blades roared to life, kicking up dust like a war drum. We punched into the sky, straight into the dark. Visibility was near zero. Wind slammed the hull like fists. My hands were locked on the controls, reading terrain more by instinct than instruments. Alarms screamed. A heat seeker clipped the tail, and we spun once, hard, before leveling out again. Alex shouted something I didn't catch, blood streaking down the side of his helmet. I couldn't stop. I wouldn't stop, not until we saw them. It took 14 minutes to reach their coordinates. The map was useless. The only thing I trusted was the blinking distress flare we caught between waves of sand. I dropped us lower, almost scraping the rooftops of bombed-out buildings. Through the haze, I saw them 6 soldiers waving like madmen, dragging one of their own. I hit the switch. The ramp dropped. Alex covered them with suppressive fire, while I held the bird steady. One by one, they climbed in, coughing, bleeding, shaking. I saw their eyes widen when they realized it was a medevac pilot, me who came for them. No heavy gunship, just a battered bird and a woman behind the stick. Then came the hit, RPG from the left. The cabin lit up in orange. Alex screamed. I turned and saw him slumped, his vest soaked, his lips moving. I leaned in. He said my name. Just that. Joanne. I don't remember much after that, just that I flew us out of there on one engine, that I didn't cry until we landed, and that Alex didn't make it. They gave me a medal. They called it heroism. But I still hear his voice sometimes, when the rotor blades start spinning, and nobody in that briefing room last week knew. None of them realized I was the one who flew into hell to bring their boys home. The first time I saw Colonel Benjamin Carter in person, I already knew who he was. I recognized the last name the moment it showed up on the command roster. Carter. The same name was etched into the folded flag I'd helped present. The same name scrawled in the corner of the final report from that night in Syria. Alex's report. My co-pilot. My friend. The man who bled out inches from my boots. Benjamin didn't recognize me. And I didn't correct him. He addressed the room with sharp authority. The kind that makes people sit straighter. His eyes never lingered on me for more than a second. But his tone, his smirk, the way he dismissed anything I said, it wasn't just rank, it was personal, even if he didn't know why. Not yet. There was something about the way he looked through me, like I was a shadow that didn't belong. He'd lost a brother in that war. He never knew who the pilot was, never knew that while Alex died, he'd whispered my name, and I'd been carrying that name every day since. Carter looked at me like he hated that someone survived, and deep down, I wondered if it made him sick to think it was me. The others didn't notice it, not really. They saw a commander giving orders and a pilot taking them. But every word he aimed my way had a jagged edge. Every briefing felt like a test I hadn't studied for. I thought about telling him, thought about walking up to his office, shutting the door, and saying it straight. I was the one who brought Alex home, but I didn't. Instead, I wore the silence like armor. Let him talk over me in meetings. Let him question my decisions like they hadn't saved lives. Because something about his grief was louder than my pride, and maybe I wasn't ready to watch it crack. Some nights, I wondered what he'd say if he knew, if he'd hate me more, or finally understand, but that answer stayed locked in a part of me I didn't open. Not yet. Because the truth wasn't just about the past. It was about what it might destroy if I let it surface. The worst part isn't the jokes, it's the way they don't even think they're being cruel. In the training room, I was laying out flight plans when one of the junior instructors cracked, "Hope the lady flyer doesn't break a nail on this op." They laughed. Even Carter smiled. I kept my voice steady, gave the next command, and let it pass. But it didn't pass. It lodged somewhere deep, right next to every other time I'd been told I didn't belong. Later that afternoon, a second lieutenant named Sarah Lee caught up to me by the lockers. She looked nervous. "Ma'am, they don't mean anything by it," she said. "It's just how they are." She thought she was being kind, but her voice echoed another one from years ago. A captain, back in Syria, right before the mission. He looked at me and said, "You're not a real soldier. You're just a pretty face they put in a cockpit to check a box." I'd smiled then too, tight and tired, just like I did with Sarah. The difference was, I'd already heard that line enough times to know how deep it cuts. Back then, I flew anyway, into gunfire, into firestorms. I never saw that captain again after the extraction. Never even got an apology. And now, years later, I was hearing the same words from a different mouth, in a different uniform. Sarah didn't mean harm. I could tell. But that's exactly how harm starts. In the quiet places, in the spaces where no one thinks to speak up. I didn't correct her, just nodded, closed my locker, and walked out. The damage had already been done. Not by her, but by every man who thought leadership came with a punchline. And by every silence that followed. The briefing room buzzed with idle talk and shifting papers. I stood near the front, going over a tactical overview, when Colonel Carter cut in from his chair at the end of the table. "Before we go further," he said, his voice laced with amusement, "why don't you tell the team your call sign, sweetheart?" Laughter flickered through the room like static. I looked at every man seated before me. Then I looked at him. "Viper Echo," I said. The room stopped breathing. The words dropped like steel, slicing straight through the noise. Chairs stilled. Pens stopped moving. I could hear the tick of the wall clock suddenly louder than my own pulse. Carter's smile faltered. Just a flicker. But it was enough. "Wait," someone whispered across the table. "You're the one. You flew the Bering mission. Syria. Unit Charlie. That was you." I gave a slight nod, nothing dramatic. I didn't need to explain. The name said it all. Viper Echo. The pilot who broke every protocol to pull 6 soldiers from a death zone. The one who limped back with a burning bird and a dying crewman. The legend they'd only heard in debriefs and bar stories. And now, she stood in front of them with her arms crossed and her voice sharp as gravel. Carter stared at me. Eyes dark. Jaw set. He didn't speak. Couldn't. Not yet. Because now, he knew. The woman he mocked, the one he never saw coming, was the same one who held his brother's hand while he died. The silence in that room wasn't awkward. It was reverent, heavy, loaded with realization. One of the younger officers dropped his coffee. The splash broke the moment, but no one laughed. Someone in the back murmured, "Holy hell, she's Viper Echo." The power shifted, no longer theirs. Mine now. I stepped closer to the table, laid the rest of my file flat, and looked Carter dead in the eyes. "You wanted my call sign, Colonel," I said. "Now you have it." No one said a word for the next 2 minutes. And in that silence, I didn't just reclaim my name. I claimed the room. The message came late. Just one line, no name. "You shouldn't have said Viper Echo." I stared at the screen, the glow casting long shadows across my desk. My hand hovered over the delete key, but I didn't press it. Instead, I opened the archive server. I knew what I was looking for. File 2037B. Operation Iron Reach. The mission that took Alex Carter's life. Accessing it wasn't exactly protocol, but some truths demand to be found, no matter the risk. I scanned the logs, flipping past sanitized language and debrief summaries until I reached the original mission directive. There it was, in faded ink and clipped language. Pilot requested abort. Then, just below it, authorization override Commander B. Carter. My breath caught, like ice in my throat. He knew. He had been the one who denied the call. Alex had wanted out. I had confirmed it. But his brother said no. Push forward. Complete the mission. The decision was written in black and white. Cold, irrefutable, and Alex died for it. Not because of the storm, not because of enemy fire, but because of a man sitting safely behind a desk who couldn't say no to pride. The hate suddenly made sense. Not directed at me because I failed, but because I didn't. Because I came back. I was the living proof of a choice he couldn't forgive himself for. Every time he looked at me, he didn't see weakness. He saw guilt. His. Projected and sharpened over 5 long years. I wasn't the pilot who'd disobeyed. I was the woman who survived a truth he refused to face. I leaned back in the chair, the silence of the base thick and tight. That was the real weight between us. Not just gender. Not just rank. It was a ghost. One he couldn't bury. Because it wore my face. I closed the file and turned off the screen. But the cold stayed. Inside my chest. Inside that room. It wasn't over. Not yet. The USB drive was small. Unmarked. Just a slip of metal that Colonel Carter slid across the table without a word. His eyes didn't meet mine. "Play it before you destroy me," he said. Then he walked out. I waited until the door clicked shut. My hands shook as I plugged it into the port. The screen went black. Then static. A voice cracked through, faint and broken. It was Alex. My breath caught. He sounded younger than I remembered. Desperate. "Request abort. Conditions unstable. Repeat. Request abort." A pause. Then another voice, firm and clipped. Carter's. "Negative. Proceed as planned." The silence that followed felt like a vacuum. Then came the whisper. So soft. I leaned in to catch it. "Tell my brother. The pilot did everything right." I didn't move. Couldn't. My throat closed. The room blurred. That was his last sentence. Not rage, not fear, just truth. A gift. Not for me, for his brother. And Carter had kept it. Not buried, not erased, just hidden. Like a wound wrapped in cloth, too tender to touch. He'd listened to it once, maybe never again. Because hearing those words meant facing everything he'd spent years trying not to. The mission, the override, the loss, and the mercy. Because Alex didn't die hating him. He died trying to absolve him, trying to pass on a truth he knew Carter couldn't carry on his own. I sat there long after the audio ended. The silence wasn't empty. It was full of what we lost, of what we still held on to, of forgiveness that asked for nothing in return. And that, more than medals or justice, was what finally broke me. The hearing room was cold. Fluorescent lights hummed above the long wooden table. I sat straight in my chair, the report folder closed in front of me. They asked for my statement. I didn't hesitate. Radar data was altered, safety protocols ignored. The pilot requested an abort. That request was denied. The room stayed quiet. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. 2 men died. I continued. One, because of a storm. The other because of a decision made too far from it. Then I looked directly at the board. I don't recommend punishment, I said. I recommend reassignment. Let him teach the next generation what failure looks like, so no one repeats it. There was a long pause. Someone exhaled. A chair creaked. But no one argued. Because what I was asking for wasn't revenge. It was something harder. Change. I didn't come here to take him down. I came here to turn pain into purpose. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was finally flying forward. The sun poured over the graduation field like soft gold. I sat near the back, no uniform, just a navy blazer and quiet pride. Around me, fresh cadets stood tall in crisp dress blues, their futures still unwritten. Colonel Carter stepped to the podium, silver streaking his hair. His voice was steady but softer than I'd ever heard it. When I was younger, I thought leadership was about giving orders. Then I met someone who showed me the power of listening. He paused, holding up a folded piece of paper. This is a letter from my brother, written the night before his final mission. He read slowly. To whoever saved me that night. If I die tomorrow, tell my brother I saw heaven once. It was made of wind and steel, and a pilot who didn't give up on us. His voice cracked. Just once. Her call sign was Viper Echo. He looked out across the crowd. You've heard that name before. Now you know who she really is. No one turned, but I felt their eyes. Not out of curiosity, out of respect. For the first time, Viper Echo didn't feel like a weight I had to carry. It felt like something that lifted. As the ceremony ended, the cadets rose to their feet. Not for a legend, for a lesson, forgiveness, survival, hope. I stood quietly, hand in my pocket, fingers brushing the corner of an old medal. And for the first time in years, I felt light enough to fly again.